In the gilded world of Manhattan's elite, the most dangerous assumption you can make is that the person serving you is powerless. Inside a temple of fine dining, a celebrated tech billionaire and his influencer girlfriend made that exact mistake. A few cruel words about their waitress's accent, a dismissive laugh that's all it took to set in motion a corporate avalanche. They saw her as a nobody, a fleeting part of their perfect evening. They had no idea they were speaking to the very woman who held the fate of their entire Emma in her hands, and who had just made a brand new decision about her $150 million investment. The air in Aurelia, a 3 Michelin-star jewel nestled in Tribeca, was thick with the scent of white truffle and quiet money. Conversations were murmurs, laughter was curated, and the clinking of Christofle silverware against Bernadotte porcelain was the restaurant's delicate heartbeat. Here every detail was a testament to obscene wealth, from the original Rothko hanging on the far wall to the hushed efficiency of the staff, who moved like shadows in their bespoke uniforms. Among those shadows was Olivia Rossi, known to her colleagues simply as Bella. To the patrons, she was just another part of the scenery. A pleasant face, a deft hand pouring a 2005 Domaine de la Romane Conti, a fleeting presence. She was good at her job. She was observant, anticipated needs before they were spoken, and possessed a quiet dignity that seemed both innate and carefully practiced. What no one at Aurelia knew was that the simple black uniform was a costume. The small shared locker in the basement was a world away from her sprawling penthouse overlooking Central Park. This job, this life as Bella, was a self-imposed mission. It was her method of due diligence, a way to understand the soul of a city and the character of its people before she invested millions into its foundations. Her company, Rossi Global Holdings, a private equity firm she built from the ground up after expanding her family's Neapolitan food import business into a global empire, was considering a 9-figure investment in a burgeoning tech company. Before signing the papers, she always made it a point to understand the world her investments would shape. She'd worked as a barista, a hotel concierge, and now a waitress. It was her secret weapon, seeing the world not from a boardroom, but from the ground floor. Tonight her focus was on Table 7, the most coveted booth in the house, nestled in a private alcove with a stunning view of the Hudson River. It was occupied by David Sterling, the charismatic 30-something CEO of Sterling Innovations, and his girlfriend, Tiffany Harrington. David was a titan of the tech world, his company's AI-driven logistics software revolutionizing supply chains globally. He was handsome, arrogant, and carried the easy confidence of a man who had never been told no. Tiffany, draped in a shimmering Balmain dress that likely cost more than Bella's annual salary, was a creature of Instagram and high society. Her influence was measured in likes and brand deals, her face a carefully constructed mask of expensive cosmetics and practiced indifference. She looked at the world through her phone screen, documenting every perfect moment for her 2 million followers. Bella approached the table with a practiced, unobtrusive grace. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling, Ms. Harrington. May I start you off with an aperitif or some water for the table?" David barely looked up from his phone, scrolling through market reports. "Sparkling. San Pellegrino." Tiffany, however, held her phone up, angling it to capture the diamond bracelet on her wrist against the backdrop of the flickering candlelight. She looked at Bella, her eyes scanning her from head to toe with a dismissive air. "And bring a bottle of the Waitress 2010. Bella gave a slight nod. The 2010 Waitress was a $7,000 bottle of wine. It was a statement. "An excellent choice, Ms. Harrington. I will just need to confirm that with our sommelier." She spoke with a soft, melodic cadence, a subtle accent that clung to the edges of her vowels, a remnant of a childhood spent in Naples before her family moved to America. Most people found it charming. Tiffany Harrington was not most people. Tiffany lowered her phone, a small, cruel smirk playing on her lips. She leaned towards David, her voice a stage whisper designed to be overheard. "Did you hear that? Where do they even find the help these days? The hills of Tuscany." David chuckled, a low, dismissive sound, still not looking up. "Be nice, Tiff. She's just trying to do her job." His words were a token defense, utterly devoid of conviction. He didn't care. Bella's spine stiffened, but her expression remained a placid mask of professional courtesy. She had faced far worse than a socialite's casual cruelty in her life. She'd battled corporate raiders in hostile takeovers and navigated the treacherous waters of international trade negotiations. This was nothing. Still, a familiar hot sting of indignation pricked at her. She wasn't just a waitress. She was a person. She returned to the table a few minutes later, the sommelier in tow. As he began the formal presentation of the wine, Tiffany interrupted him, waving a dismissive hand. "Just give it to her," she said, nodding at Bella. "Let's see if she can handle it." The sommelier, a proud Frenchman named Jean-Pierre, looked aghast. But a sharp glance from the restaurant manager, Mr. Henderson, who was hovering nervously nearby, silenced his protest. This was David Sterling's table. The customer was always right, especially when they were a billionaire. Bella took the bottle. Her hands, which had signed off on deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars, were steady as she expertly cut the foil and eased the cork from the bottle with a barely audible sigh. The contempt radiating from Tiffany was a physical force, a palpable wave of disdain. Bella focused on her task, her movements precise and economical. She knew this was a test, a petty game of power, and she refused to give Tiffany the satisfaction of seeing her falter. She poured a small amount into David's glass for him to taste. He swirled the deep ruby liquid, sniffed it, and nodded his approval without a word. Bella then moved to pour for Tiffany. As the wine flowed into the delicate Zalto glass, Tiffany watched her, her eyes narrowed. "You know," Tiffany began, her voice dripping with condescension, "my family has a summer home in Italy, the real Italy, not some little village where you all stomp grapes with your feet." She paused, waiting for a reaction. "You must miss it. The simple life." Bella finished pouring and placed the bottle on the table, her face unreadable. "My life is not so simple, Miss Harrington," she replied, her voice even. "But I do appreciate a good wine." The faintest hint of steel in her tone seemed to register with Tiffany. For the first time, Tiffany looked at her, really looked at her, as if trying to place where she had seen this quiet confidence before. But she quickly dismissed it. This was a waitress, a nobody. "Just make sure our glasses don't get empty," Tiffany snapped, turning back to David. "Now, darling, tell me about the big meeting tomorrow. The new investor. Are they finally going to give you the money you need to crush Bezos?" David finally put his phone down, a genuine spark of excitement in his eyes. "It's a done deal. 150 million. The final piece of the puzzle. It's some private equity firm, Rossi Global Holdings, run by some woman, apparently. Never met her. All done through her lawyers. But with this cash injection, we're not just competing. We're dominating." Bella, standing a few feet away, heard the name of her own company. A cold, clear sense of purpose washed over her, hardening the soft edges of her patience into something sharp and unyielding. The night she realized had just become far more interesting. And for David Sterling and Tiffany Harrington, far more consequential. The dinner service progressed as a masterclass in passive aggression. Every request from Tiffany was a veiled insult, every interaction a power play. She'd ask for her steak to be sent back, claiming it was medium rare when she'd requested it a perfect warm pink center, a distinction without a difference. She'd complain that her water glass was sweating too much condensation onto the fret linen tablecloth. She critiqued Bella's posture, her choice of words, her very presence. David remained largely oblivious, absorbed in his own world. He took calls at the table, his voice booming with authority as he barked orders at subordinates. He saw Tiffany's behavior not as cruelty, but as the expected eccentricities of a woman of her standing. It was background noise in the symphony of his success. For Bella, each trip to Table 7 was like wading into toxic waters. Her colleagues noticed. Carlos, a waiter who had become a friend over the past few weeks, caught her arm as she entered the kitchen. "Don't let her get to you," he whispered, his eyes dark with concern. "She's famous for this. Last year she made a busboy cry because she didn't like the way he folded a napkin." "I'm fine, Carlos," Bella said, her voice tighter than she intended. "It's just a job." But it was becoming more than that. This wasn't just about a potential investment anymore. It was about the rot at the core of the man she was about to entrust with $150 million, a man's character she firmly believed was revealed not in how he treated his equals, but his perceived inferiors. The final straw came with dessert. Bella placed a delicate lavender crème brûlée in front of Tiffany, the caramelized sugar top glistening like amber. "Here is your crème brûlée," Bella announced softly. Tiffany picked up her spoon and tapped the surface, but instead of breaking it, she let the spoon clatter back onto the plate. She looked up at Bella, her expression one of utter boredom, and decided it was time for her grand finale. "Crème brûlée," Tiffany repeated slowly, deliberately, mangling the pronunciation. "You say it so funny, with that little accent. Where did you say you were from again?" "I did not say," Bella replied, her jaw tight. "Oh, that's right. You didn't," Tiffany smirked, leaning forward as if sharing a secret. "It's just so thick. It's like you're gargling olive oil while you talk. It's hard to understand. Crème brûlée, eh? Can you try saying it like that, sweetie, for us slowly?" The air around the table grew cold and still. Even David paused a forkful of his own dessert, halfway to his mouth, sensing the mood had shifted from casual condescension to outright humiliation. He looked from his girlfriend's smug face to the waitress's unnervingly calm one. A flicker of something discomfort, maybe even shame, crossed his face, but it was fleeting. He said nothing. His silence was an endorsement. Bella stood frozen for a moment. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to unleash the full force of her identity. To tell this vapid, cruel woman that the funny accent she was mocking had commanded boardrooms across the globe. To tell her that she could buy this restaurant, this building, and everything Tiffany was wearing with the interest she earned in a single day. But she didn't. Her self-control was a fortress built over years of struggle and discipline. She let the insult hang in the air, a poisonous cloud. She looked past Tiffany and directly into David Sterling's eyes. She held his gaze, her own eyes clear and piercing, and in them he saw not the deference of a servant, but the cool assessment of a judge. Finally, Bella spoke, her voice dangerously quiet, the melodic accent now sharpened to a fine point. "Is there anything else I can get for you, Miss Harrington?" The use of her full name, The formal, icy tone, it was a dismissal. It was Bella, the waitress, ending the conversation, taking back the power. Tiffany, flustered by the unexpected lack of a groveling apology or a tearful retreat, could only sputter. Just the check. And make it quick. You've ruined my appetite." Bella nodded once, a sharp, final gesture. She turned and walked away. Her back straight, her steps measured. She didn't hurry. She didn't run. She moved with the deliberate pace of someone who had just made a monumental decision. Back in the kitchen, she printed their bill. The total came to £8,452.17. As she placed it in the leather folio, Carlos came over. "Are you okay?" I was about to call the manager. "I'm more than okay, Carlos," Bella said, a strange, calm clarity settling over her. "I have everything I need." She delivered the check to the table. David, eager to leave the uncomfortable atmosphere, quickly produced a black American Express Centurion card. Bella took it, ran the payment, and returned with the receipt for him to sign. As he scribbled his signature, Tiffany, needing the final word, delivered her parting shot. "You know a word of advice," she said, not bothering to look at Bella. "You should really work on your English if you want to get anywhere in this country. Some people just aren't cut out for high-end service." Bella looked at the signed receipt in her hand. David had left a generous tip, a guilty offering to absolve himself. It was an insult on top of an injury. She met his eyes one last time. "Thank you for your advice, Miss Harrington," she said, her voice as smooth and cold as polished marble. "I will be sure to take it into consideration. Have a wonderful evening, Mr. Sterling." She walked away from table 7 and didn't look back. She went straight to Mr. Henderson's office, untied her apron, and placed it neatly on his desk. "I'm finished for the night, Mr. Henderson," she said. "Bella, is everything all right? Your shift isn't over for another 2 hours." "Something has come up," she said. "An urgent business matter. Thank you for the opportunity." Before he could protest, she was gone, disappearing out the staff exit into the cool New York night, leaving the identity of Bella the waitress behind her forever. The woman who would walk into Sterling Innovations the next morning would be someone else entirely. The taxi ride from Tribeca to her residence at 220 Central Park South was a journey between universes. Olivia Rossi shed the skin of Bella with each passing city block. The lingering scent of truffle frites and seared scallops was replaced by the cool, clean fragrance of the leather seats. The weight of Tiffany Harrington's scorn began to dissipate, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. Not the hot, messy anger of a wounded ego, but the focused rage of a strategist whose opponent had just revealed a fatal weakness. She strode through the ridiculously opulent lobby, nodding at the doorman who greeted her with a respectful, "Good evening, Ms. Rossi." The private elevator whisked her silently up to the 75th floor. The doors opened directly into her penthouse, a vast, minimalist space of glass, steel, and stone. The entire northern wall was a floor-to-ceiling window, offering a breathtaking, godlike view of Central Park, a dark, rectangular sea of tranquility amidst a glittering galaxy of city lights. Olivia dropped her keys into a marble bowl and walked over to the bar, a single slab of black Italian granite. She ignored the top-shelf spirits and instead pulled a bottle of San Pellegrino from the Sub-Zero fridge, the same water David Sterling had ordered. She poured a glass, the bubbles fizzing aggressively, and took a long drink. The waitress uniform felt like a straitjacket. She went into her bedroom, the size of a small apartment, and peeled it off, dropping it into a laundry basket as if it were contaminated. She showered, letting the steaming hot water wash away the last vestiges of Aurelia. She emerged, wrapped in a plush fret robe, the same brand as the tablecloth Tiffany had fussed over, and padded back into the living room. On a massive oak desk sat her laptop, a sleek, powerful machine. She opened it, and the screen lit up with the Sterling Innovations investment prospectus. There it was, in black and white, Project Constellation, Series C funding round. Lead investor Rossi Global Holdings, amount $150,000. Her finger hovered over the trackpad. An hour ago, this deal was a foregone conclusion. Sterling's tech was brilliant. Their Synapse platform was a logistical masterpiece promising to reduce shipping times and costs by up to 40%. The projections were stellar, the market ripe for disruption. Her analysts had vetted the numbers, and they were solid. But numbers weren't everything. She had built her empire on one core principle taught to her by her grandfather, who started their family business with a single olive grove in Naples Invest, in people, not just ideas. An idea could be stolen or replicated. The character of a leader, however, determined a company's resilience, its integrity, its soul. And what had she seen tonight? She had seen the character of David Sterling. It was a hollow shell, a man so insulated by his own success that he couldn't recognize basic human decency. A leader who permitted through his silence the casual cruelty of his companion. He was weak. Not in business acumen, perhaps, but in moral fiber. And that kind of weakness, Olivia knew, was a cancer. It starts small, but eventually corrupts everything it touches. The company culture would reflect the man at the top. The way he treated a waitress was indicative of how he would treat his junior employees, his smaller clients, his less powerful partners. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. It was answered on the first ring. "Arthur," she said, her voice now devoid of any trace of a waitress's deference. It was the voice of command. "It's Olivia." Arthur Vance was her chief counsel and mentor, a 70-year-old man with a mind as sharp as a scalpel. "Olivia, it's nearly midnight. I trust your final bit of unorthodox reconnaissance was fruitful." He never fully approved of her undercover methods, but he couldn't argue with their results. "Extremely," Olivia said, walking over to the window and gazing down at the city. "There's been a material change in circumstances regarding the Sterling deal." There was a pause on the other end. "A material change. Our final sign-off is scheduled for 10 a.m. The wire transfer is already queued." "What kind of change?" "The kind that calls the entire character of the CEO into question," she replied. "Tell me, Arthur, what are our options? The term sheet is signed, but the funds haven't been transferred. How much leverage do we have?" Arthur was silent for a moment, processing. "The term sheet is non-binding, but it creates a strong obligation in good faith. Pulling out now would send shockwaves. We'd need a very, very good reason. A breach of a major representation or warranty." "What about a key person clause?" Olivia asked. "Does our agreement have language pertaining to the conduct and integrity of the CEO?" "Of course," Arthur said. "Standard boilerplate. Conduct that could bring the company into disrepute. But it's usually invoked for things like criminal charges or public scandal, Olivia." "Not," he trailed off, inviting her to explain. Olivia relayed the events of the evening in a calm, dispassionate tone. She didn't embellish or editorialize. She simply presented the facts, the condescension, the mockery. Tiffany's venom, and most importantly, David's silent, complicit approval. When she finished, Arthur let out a low whistle. "Good Lord, the arrogance is astounding. But is it enough to kill a $150 million deal? Killing the deal is one option." Olivia said, a new, more audacious idea beginning to form in her mind. but it feels insufficient. Sterling Innovations has a brilliant product and hundreds of talented employees. Why should they suffer for the sins of their CEO? The technology is sound. The foundation is strong. It's the man in the big chair who is the liability. Arthur caught her meaning instantly. Oh no. Olivia, you're not suggesting. Why not? Olivia's voice was now electric with energy. He's over-leveraged. I've seen his personal financials. He's poured every penny into this company. He needs our cash to stay solvent and fight off that takeover bid from Oracle. He's desperate. You're talking about a hostile restructuring. Arthur said, his tone a mix of alarm and admiration. You want to use the default clause to renegotiate the terms, to take control. I don't want to just be an investor, Arthur, Olivia said, her eyes glinting in the city lights. I want to be a partner, a controlling partner, one who ensures the company's culture is as robust as its code. She paused, the memory of Tiffany's sneering face flashing in her mind. David Sterling needs to be taught a lesson in humility, and I am going to be the one to teach him. This is incredibly aggressive. It's a bloodbath. It's business, Olivia corrected him. He showed me his character. Now I'll show him mine. Get the team ready. I want a new set of terms drawn up by sunrise. I'll be leading the meeting tomorrow morning, personally. And the old terms? Arthur asked. Shred them, Olivia said. The deal as it stands is dead. She hung up the phone. The woman who had been mocked for her accent was about to use her voice to orchestrate a corporate takeover. The waitress Tiffany Harrington had tried to humiliate was about to become her boyfriend's worst nightmare. The atmosphere in the Sterling Innovations headquarters on Park Avenue was one of electric anticipation. The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 50th floor conference room, illuminating a scene of nervous energy. The long obsidian table was polished to a mirror shine. Bottles of Fiji water stood like soldiers at each place setting. A team of David's top executives, the CFO, the CTO, the head of operations, were all present, their faces a mixture of excitement and anxiety. This was the day. The $150 million wire transfer from Rossi Global Holdings was more than just money. It was validation. It was the key that would unlock the next phase of their global expansion, a war chest to fend off their lumbering corporate rivals and a definitive signal to Wall Street that Sterling Innovations was the future. David Sterling stood at the head of the table, exuding confidence. He was dressed in a custom Tom Ford suit, a Patek Philippe watch on his wrist. Last night's dinner was a distant memory, a minor blip of unpleasantness already forgotten. He had woken up this morning feeling like a king, the taste of victory already on his tongue. "All right, people, listen up," he said, clapping his hands together. "The meeting is at 10. I want everyone sharp. Robert, you have the latest performance metrics." Robert Chen, the COO, and David's longtime second-in-command, nodded, tapping his tablet. "Ready to go, David. Q3 growth is up 18% quarter over quarter. User acquisition is exceeding all projections." Robert was the opposite of David. He was quiet, meticulous, and deeply respected by the rank-and-file employees. While David was the visionary and the salesman, Robert was the one who made the trains run on time. He was also the only one who seemed to notice the fine cracks in David's armor of arrogance. "Good. Excellent," David said, pacing the room. "The representative from Rossi will be here any minute. From what I hear, it's the principal herself, Olivia Rossi. A bit unusual for her to come in person for a final signing, but it shows how serious they are about us." Suddenly the door to the conference room swung open, and Tiffany Harrington sashayed in carrying a ridiculously small Jacquemus handbag and a large cup of coffee. Ooh, Robert Chen visibly flinched. "Tiffany, what are you doing here? What does it look like, Robbie?" she chirped, planting a kiss on David's cheek. "I'm here for moral support. I want to be here when my brilliant boyfriend officially becomes the most powerful man in tech." David beamed, wrapping an arm around her waist. "I told her she could sit in. It's just a formality, a signature and a handshake. No harm done." Robert looked horrified. "David, this is highly irregular. It's a closed-door meeting with our primary investor. Her presence is unprofessional." "Oh, relax, Robert." Tiffany scoffed, settling into a chair beside David's at the head of the table. "I'll be as quiet as a mouse. I just want a picture for my Insta when the deal is signed. It's great PR for both of us." She pulled out her phone, already searching for the perfect filter. Robert shot a desperate look at David, but the CEO just shrugged, utterly bewitched. To him, Tiffany was a trophy. And what was the point of a trophy if you couldn't show it off at your moment of triumph? The intercom on the conference phone buzzed. "Mr. Sterling," his assistant's voice came through. "Miss Rossi is here." "Excellent," David boomed. "Send her in." The executives straightened their ties and smoothed their jackets. The air crackled. This was it. The door opened, and a woman stepped through. Tiffany, busy taking a selfie, didn't look up at first. David smiled, his hand outstretched, ready to greet the mysterious matriarch of Rossi Global Holdings. Robert Chen stepped forward, a polite professional smile on his face. And then a collective silent wave of confusion and shock washed over the room. The woman standing in the doorway was not some gray-haired corporate titan in a stuffy power suit. She was young, poised, and dressed in a stunningly tailored navy blue Armani pantsuit that screamed quiet authority. Her dark hair was pulled back into a sleek, severe ponytail, and her eyes, clear and sharp, swept across the room, taking in every detail, every face. It was the waitress. It was Bella. Robert Chen's professional smile froze, and then melted away into disbelief. He recognized her instantly. The face was the same, but the entire context was wrong. It was like seeing a character from a dream walk into your waking life. David's outstretched hand faltered and dropped to his side. His brain struggled to reconcile the two images, the subservient waitress from last night and the commanding presence standing before him. The accent. He could almost hear it now. But in his memory, it was no longer the mark of a poor immigrant, but something else, something worldly and sophisticated. But it was Tiffany's reaction that was the most spectacular. She looked up from her phone, a bored expression on her face, which then twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. The phone slipped from her grasp and clattered onto the obsidian table. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The blood drained from her face, leaving her expensive foundation looking like a chalky veneer. Olivia Rossi let the silence stretch, enjoying the tableau of stunned faces. She walked calmly into the room, her Louboutin heels clicking with sharp, deliberate taps on the polished concrete floor. She wasn't followed by a team of lawyers, just one older, distinguished gentleman, Arthur Vance. She walked right past the stunned executives and stopped at the head of the table directly opposite David and Tiffany. She placed her leather portfolio on the table with a soft thud. She looked at David, then her gaze shifted to Tiffany, her eyes as cold as a winter sea. "Ms. Harrington," Olivia said, her voice smooth and controlled, the Neapolitan accent a subtle, elegant undertone. "What a surprise to see you again so soon. I hope you've recovered your appetite. Then she turned her full attention to the man of the hour. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice dropping to a formal all-business tone that sent a chill down his spine. "I am Olivia Rossi. Thank you for making the time to see me. We have a great deal to discuss, but first—" She paused, gesturing with a single, perfectly manicured finger towards Tiffany. "I believe your guest is in the wrong room. This is a private meeting. Please have her removed." The directness of the command, the sheer, unadulterated power behind it, broke the spell. David Sterling, the tech titan, the master of his universe, found himself utterly speechless. The woman he and his girlfriend had belittled less than 12 hours ago was here to give him $150 million. And her first order of business was to kick his girlfriend out of the room. The world had just turned upside down, and he was in free fall. The silence in the boardroom was a living thing, thick and suffocating. David Sterling looked as though he'd been struck by lightning. His mouth opened and closed, but his brain, usually so quick and decisive, failed to provide him with words. Tiffany, however, recovered first, her shock curdling into defensive rage. "Removed!" she screeched, her voice shrill and ugly. "You can't talk to me like that. David, tell her. Tell this waitress who I am." Olivia didn't even glance at her. Her focus remained locked on David, her expression one of profound disappointment. "Mr. Sterling," she repeated, her voice dropping a degree colder. "Your lack of control over this situation is a perfect illustration of the core problem we're here to discuss. Please handle it. Now." The ultimatum hung in the air. On one side was his shrieking, hysterical girlfriend. On the other was the woman holding the future of his company in her hands. It wasn't a choice. "Tiff," David finally managed, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Please, just wait outside. We'll talk later." "Wait outside? Are you serious?" Tiffany shrieked, turning on him. "You're taking her side after what I told you about her. She's playing you. This has to be some kind of scam." "Ms. Harrington?" Arthur Vance interjected, his voice calm and authoritative, stepping forward for the first time. "I am Arthur Vance, General Counsel for Rossi Global Holdings. I can assure you this is no scam. My client, Ms. Rossi, is the sole proprietor of the firm with which you have been negotiating for the past 6 months. Now, as this is a sensitive financial meeting, your presence is inappropriate. Security can escort you out, or you can leave on your own. The choice is yours." The mention of security was the final blow. Humiliation washed over Tiffany's face. She shot a look of pure venom at Olivia, then a betrayed, pleading look at David. When he refused to meet her eyes, she snatched her purse from the table, her hands trembling with rage. "Fine," she hissed, her voice cracking. "Fine. You'll regret this, David. Both of you." She stormed out of the room, slamming the heavy glass door behind her. The sound echoed like a gunshot, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. Olivia waited a beat, allowing the drama to settle. Then she calmly took her seat at the head of the table. "Well," she said, opening her portfolio. "Now that the distractions are dealt with, let's get down to business." David, visibly shaken, sank into his chair. Robert Chen and the other executives exchanged nervous, bewildered glances. They were completely off script, adrift in uncharted territory. I apologize for that," David stammered. "I don't know what to say. Ms. Rossi, about last night." "Last night was not a social call, Mr. Sterling. It was the final stage of my due diligence." Olivia cut him off cleanly. "My firm doesn't just analyze spreadsheets. We analyze character, and what I observed was a severe liability in the leadership of Sterling Innovations. She paused, letting the weight of her words land. I observed a CEO who is so detached from the reality of his own service environment that he is functionally blind. I observed a man who not only permits, but tacitly encourages a culture of disrespect and arrogance. A culture that I can only assume permeates this company from the top down. David paled. That's not fair. What happens in my personal life has no bearing on how I run my company. On the contrary, Olivia countered, her voice like ice, it has every bearing. Your personal life was on display in a public forum, creating a hostile environment for the working staff. The woman you allowed to verbally abuse one of those staff members is the same woman you brought into a confidential investor meeting. That doesn't show a separation of personal and professional life. It shows a catastrophic lack of judgment in both. It tells me you are reckless. She leaned forward, her eyes pinning him in place. The agreement we had on the table was based on the assumption that I was investing in a visionary leader. I was mistaken. I was investing in a liability. Therefore, that deal is no longer on the table. A collective gasp went through the room. Robert Chen put his head in his hands. David looked like he might be sick. No longer. On the table, he choked out. But the term, sheet. We had an agreement. We had a non-binding piece of paper, Arthur Vance clarified smoothly. One with a material adverse change clause, which we believe this situation more than qualifies for. So that's it. You're just walking away, David asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Because of a misunderstanding at a restaurant. You'd kill the company, put hundreds of people out of work over a few careless words. This was the moment Olivia had been waiting for. The moment he revealed his true nature, not a leader taking responsibility, but a child trying to deflect blame. First, Mr. Sterling, they were not careless words. They were cruel, targeted, and designed to humiliate. Your silence made you a party to them. She stated, her voice sharp and precise. And second, who said anything about killing the company? A flicker of hope returned to David's eyes. You mean, you'll reconsider? No, Olivia said flatly. I am not reconsidering the old deal. I am proposing a new one. She slid a new document binder across the polished table towards him. It was half the thickness of the original. David stared at it as if it were a cobra. The technology behind Sterling Innovations is sound, Olivia continued. Your team, especially the people Mr. Chen manages, is first-rate. The asset is valuable. The leadership, however, is compromised. Therefore, Rossi Global Holdings will no longer be making a minority stake investment. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city skyline before turning back to face them. Instead, we will be executing a leveraged buyout of a 51% controlling interest in the company, she announced. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. That's insane! David shouted, jumping to his feet. I'll never agree to that. This is my company. Is it? Olivia challenged, her voice quiet, but carrying more weight than his shout. You're leveraged to the hilt. You have a bridge loan coming due in 30 days that you can't pay without our capital. Oracle has a standing tender offer on the table that your board is legally obligated to consider, one that would see you ousted and your entire executive team replaced. You have no cards left to play. She returned to the table and pointed to the new binder. My offer is this. We inject $200 million into the company, double the original amount. We kill the Oracle bid, we pay off your debt, and we fund Project Constellation and more. The company survives. Your employees keep their jobs. The technology thrives. David stared at her, breathing heavily. What's the catch? The catch, Olivia said, her gaze unwavering, is that you are no longer CEO. You will be moved to a chief product officer role with no boardroom seat and no executive authority. You will focus on what you're good at, the tech, and stay out of leadership. And who, David asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm, would you deign to install as the new CEO? Olivia's eyes flicked to the man sitting silently beside David, the man who had looked horrified by Tiffany's behavior, the man who ran the company day to day. Mr. Chen will be promoted to Chief Executive Officer, she declared, and I will be taking the position of Executive Chairwoman of the board. The silence that followed was absolute. Robert Chen looked up, his face a mask of utter astonishment. David Sterling stared at his number two, then at Olivia, the look of betrayal and utter defeat dawning on his face. The waitress he'd ignored was not just taking his money back. She was taking his company, his title, his power, his entire world. And she was handing it to the one person in the room who truly deserved it. The boardroom became a pressure cooker. David Sterling cycled through a series of emotions: disbelief, rage, pleading, and finally, a hollow, defeated resignation. He paced the room like a caned animal, his Tom Ford suit suddenly looking like a costume he was no longer entitled to wear. You can't do this, he repeated, though the words lacked conviction. The board will never approve it. My shareholders, your shareholders want to see a return on their investment. Arthur Vance cut in his tone, dry and factual. They are facing two options. Option A, a hostile takeover by Oracle, where the company is absorbed, its culture gutted, and most of them are forced to sell their shares at a price far below their potential value. Option B, a massive cash infusion and a new stable leadership structure led by a respected internal candidate and backed by one of the most successful private equity firms in the country. Which option do you think they will choose, Mr. Sterling? David had no answer. He looked at Robert Chen, his eyes pleading for an ally. Robert, you can't be okay with this. We built this company together. Robert Chen, who had been silent and stunned until now, slowly lifted his head. He looked not at David, but at Olivia. There was a complex mix of shock, fear, and a dawning sense of opportunity in his eyes. He had spent years as David's loyal lieutenant, cleaning up his messes, managing the teams he ignored, and quietly steering the ship while David took the credit. David, Robert began, his voice steady and clear. You brought your girlfriend to an investor meeting. You let that scene at the restaurant happen. You've been reckless with spending. You've ignored HR complaints about the culture you've created. I've been telling you for a year that we were vulnerable. You didn't listen. He turned to Olivia. Ms. Rossi, your assessment is harsh, but it is not wrong. The betrayal was complete. It was a corporate coup, and David was the deposed king. He collapsed back into his chair. The fight gone out of him. The swagger, the arrogance, the easy confidence, it had all been a fragile shell, and Olivia Rossi had shattered it with a single, well-aimed blow. You have until 5 p.m. today to accept the terms, Olivia said, rising from her chair. If I don't hear from your lawyers by then, the offer is withdrawn, and I will personally call Larry Ellison's office and let them know Sterling Innovations is ripe for the picking. I believe he'll be very grateful for the tip. She snapped her portfolio shut. Arthur, Mr. Chen. A word, please. She swept out of the boardroom, leaving David Sterling alone in the wreckage of his empire, with only the Fiji water and the ghosts of his bad decisions for company. In an adjacent office, Olivia laid out her vision to a still-dazed Robert Chen. "This company needs a cultural reset, Robert. Your product helps people who work in warehouses, on shipping docks, in delivery trucks. Your CEO needs to respect those people. The first thing we're going to do is establish a new code of conduct. We are also instituting a profit-sharing program for all employees, not just the executives." She looked him in the eye. "I chose you because I've been watching you for months. You command respect, not demand it. You're the one the employees trust. Don't make me regret this decision." "I won't, Ms. Rosie," Robert said, a new sense of purpose in his voice. "I won't." Meanwhile, the unraveling of Tiffany Harrington was swift and brutal. After storming out of the Sterling offices, she immediately tried to do what she always did when she was upset: retail therapy. She strode into the Chanel boutique on Madison Avenue, her face a thunderous mask. "I'll take this one," she said to a sales associate, pointing to a $10,000 handbag. She handed over her credit card, a supplementary card linked to David's account. The associate returned a moment later, her expression apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Harrington. The card has been declined." "Declined?" Tiffany snapped. "That's impossible. Run it again." They ran it again. Declined. Tiffany's face turned white. She frantically tried another card, also linked to David. Declined. A third. Declined. In his office, amidst his despair, David had made his first and only decisive action of the day. With a few keystrokes, he had financially severed himself from her. The perks, the access, the entire golden scaffolding of her life, which she had thought was her own, but had always belonged to him, was gone. She stumbled out of the store, her phone buzzing incessantly. It wasn't her friends. It was Page 6 gossip columnists. Someone from the Sterling office had leaked the story. "Tech mogul David Sterling ousted in shock takeover." One headline blared, "Influencer Tiffany Harrington's public meltdown at center of billion-dollar shakeup," screamed another. Her world wasn't just collapsing, it was being publicly dismantled for the world to see, a spectacle for the very audience she had cultivated. The phone in her hand, the device that had been the source of her power and fame, was now a conduit for her ruin. The likes were turning to laughing emojis. The fawning comments were being replaced by snake emojis and insults. Her carefully curated life was burning down in real time. At 4:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the deadline, Olivia's lawyer received the call. David Sterling accepted the terms. The king had abdicated his throne. 3 months later, the transformation at Sterling Innovations was palpable. The 50th floor, once the exclusive domain of David and his inner circle, had been redesigned. The corner office, David's former throne room, was now a collaborative workspace for promising junior engineers. The entire atmosphere had shifted from a high-stakes, high-stress boys' club to a more focused, professional and respectful environment. Robert Chen had stepped into the CEO role with a quiet confidence that inspired loyalty. Guided by Olivia, who served as an active and engaged executive chairwoman, he implemented the changes she had mandated. The new employee profit-sharing program was a massive morale booster. The company culture, once a reflection of David's arrogance, was now being rebuilt on a foundation of integrity and mutual respect. Productivity and innovation soared. David Sterling, now the chief product officer, was a changed man. The public humiliation had stripped him of his hubris. He was humbled quieter, and for the first time focused solely on his work. Without the pressures of leadership for which he was so ill-suited, he excelled developing new features for the Synapse platform, that were more brilliant than ever. He and Olivia had a professional, if distant, relationship. He respected her and feared her in equal measure. He had learned his lesson the hard way. He never heard from Tiffany Harrington again. Rumor had it she had moved back home with her parents in Ohio, her influencer career in ashes. One crisp autumn afternoon, Olivia was finishing a board meeting when her assistant informed her she had a visitor. A few moments later, Carlos, her former co-worker from Aurelia, was shown into her office. He was dressed not in a waiter's uniform, but in a smart business suit, looking nervous but excited. "Bella, Ms. Rossi," he stammered, his eyes wide as he took in the panoramic view. I can't believe it." Olivia smiled, a genuine warm smile. "Please, Carlos, it's Olivia. It's good to see you." "You too," he said. "Listen, I came to thank you. After you left, things at the restaurant changed. A new corporate benefits package showed up. Full health and dental, a retirement plan. Stuff we've never had. And Mr. Henderson told me the new program was sponsored by one of our big corporate clients, Sterling Innovations." He paused, connecting the dots. "That was you, wasn't it? A company's culture extends to how it treats its vendors and their employees," Olivia said simply. "It was good business." "It was life-changing," Carlos corrected her. "And that's not all. You know I've been taking night classes in logistics management. Well, I saw a job posting for a junior coordinator at Sterling. I applied, not thinking I had a chance. But then I got a call. I start on Monday." Olivia's smile widened. "I know. Robert told me. He said you were the most impressive candidate they interviewed. Your real-world experience at the restaurant, dealing with inventory and suppliers under pressure, it was exactly what they were looking for." Tears welled in Carlos's eyes. "I just wanted to thank you. You didn't have to do any of that. Everyone deserves a chance to be seen for who they are, Carlos," she said, standing and extending her hand. "Not for the uniform they wear or the accent they have. Welcome to the team." After he left, Olivia stood by the window looking down at the city. It wasn't a view of conquest, but of responsibility. She hadn't set out to destroy David Sterling. She had set out to build something. The incident at Aurelia hadn't been an obstacle. It had been an opportunity to replace a rotten foundation with a stronger one. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Arthur. "Oracle just announced a major acquisition of our biggest competitor. Their stock is down 5%. Ours is projected to jump 10% at opening bell tomorrow. Your timing was, as usual, impeccable." Olivia typed a simple reply. It wasn't timing. It was character. She had won. Not just the company, but something more. She had proven that in the cutthroat world of business, in the gilded cages of New York City, the greatest asset wasn't money or power, but the integrity to see the humanity in everyone, from the billionaire in the boardroom to the waitress serving his wine. And that was a truth worth more than any investment. And that's how a single evening of cruelty completely rewrote the future of a billion-dollar company. This story is a powerful reminder that our true character isn't defined by our wealth or our status, but by how we treat those we have no obligation to impress. Olivia Rossi didn't just seek revenge. She sought justice and created a better reality not only for herself, but for hundreds of employees who deserved a leader who valued them. She turned an insult into an empire built on respect. What do you think about the choices she made? Was it a brilliant power play or a step too far? We've all seen or experienced moments where someone was underestimated or treated poorly. Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If this story of karmic justice and hidden strength resonated with you, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing this video with friends, and most importantly, subscribing to the channel for more unforgettable stories. Every click helps us bring more content like this to you. Thank you for listening.